The elevator opens on the 32nd floor and Baek Young-hoon walks out of the worst night of his professional year into his own penthouse, where a child he has never seen before is sitting on his couch eating his crackers. She looks up at him. She does not look afraid. She looks like someone who has assessed the situation. The penthouse, the crackers, the man in the doorway with the weight of 3 fractured alliances and 2 confirmed betrayals written into the set of his jaw, and found everything acceptable. "Your couch is very soft," she says. Baek Young-hoon, who has walked into rooms and watched grown men find urgent reasons to be somewhere else, stands in his own living room and says absolutely nothing. The child holds out a cracker. "Are you hungry? You look like you had a bad day." What happens when the most feared man in Incheon meets the one person in the world who isn't afraid of him, and she's 5 years old? He looks at her for a long moment. Really looks, dark-skinned, with 2 uneven puffs of hair on either side of her head, one slightly higher than the other, like whoever did them this morning was in a hurry or working by feel. She's wearing yellow pajamas with small elephants on them. She is holding out a cracker with the patient generosity of someone who has all the time in the world. "Where did you come from?" he says. It is not quite a question. "Downstairs," she says. "The elevator was open. The elevator requires a key card." She considers this. "The door was open," she says instead, unbothered by the contradiction. "That door," he stops, "is housekeeper." Mrs. Shin had been in this evening and hadn't pulled the service entrance fully shut. He had noticed it and thought, "I'll deal with it when I'm home." "How did you get up here?" "The buttons," she says, with the gentle patience of someone explaining something obvious. "I pressed 32 because it's my favorite number." "Why is 32 your favorite number?" "Mama Zuri is 29 and I am 5 and 29 plus 5 is 34 but 32 is close and rounder." She tilts her head. "Also it has a 3 and a 2 and those are both good numbers by themselves." Young-hoon looks at this child. His phone has 15 unread messages. His operations director has been trying to reach him for the last 40 minutes. There is a war beginning, quiet, organized, the kind that happens in spreadsheets and shipping manifests before it happens anywhere visible. And he is standing in his penthouse looking at a 5-year-old who selected his floor based on arithmetic preferences. He pulls out his phone. Calls building security. "There's a child on 32. Find out who she belongs to." "Sir, we already know, we've been looking for her. The on-call medical contact is on her way up." "We're sorry, Mr. Beck, she was in the waiting area on 4N. Send the contact up when she arrives." He hangs up. The child has watched this entire exchange with the focused attention of someone taking notes. "Are you important?" she asks. "Why?" "Because you talk like you're important. My Mama Zuri talks like that when she's at the hospital. Like the words don't have to ask permission." He looks at her. Sits down across from her. Not on instinct, not because he decided to, just because his legs have been carrying the weight of this evening for 3 hours and the couch is right there. "Who's Mama Zuri?" "My mama," she says simply. "My real mama went to God but Mama Zuri is mine now." The directness of it lands somewhere he wasn't expecting. No cushion. No careful language. As stated. The way a child states things when they've said them enough times that the words have stopped being painful and started being fact. "What's your name?" "Zola." She holds out another cracker. "Do you want one?" "There are a lot." "Those are my crackers." She looks at the box. Looks at him. "Do you want them back?" He doesn't answer that. He reaches out and takes one instead. She smiles, full and immediate like the sun coming out from behind something, and goes back to watching his television, which is playing a nature documentary she has apparently found and selected herself. Coral reef. Colors moving through water. They sit in something that is not quite silence because the television is on, and is not quite comfort because he doesn't know this child, and is, somehow, not entirely uncomfortable. His phone buzzes again. He ignores it. Zuri Abra covers the distance between the 14th floor and the elevator in 30 seconds flat, which is approximately how long it takes her to go from she's fine in the waiting area to building security says she's on 32 to a very specific kind of terrified that only mothers understand. The kind that lives in your chest like a fist. The elevator opens. The penthouse entrance is lit, door slightly ajar. Two security guards stand outside it, looking like men who would rather be anywhere else. "She's inside," one of them says. "Mr. Beck said." Zuri doesn't wait for what Mr. Beck said. He pushes through. The first thing she sees, Zola on a very large, very cream-colored couch, eating crackers and watching a nature documentary with the complete ease of a child in her own home. The second thing she sees, the man sitting across from her. She knows who he is. 8 months in this building, and you learn who occupies the 32nd floor the same way you learn which patients are complicated. Not from one conversation but from the accumulation of small observations. The way security straightens when his name is mentioned. The way the building staff addresses him. The absence of personal details in the lobby directory. Just a number, no name. He is watching Zola watch the documentary. There is an expression on his face that Zuri cannot immediately categorize. Not anger. Not amusement. Something more complicated than either. "Mama Zuri." Zola looks up, delighted. "This man has very good crackers. I saved you some." Zuri's carefully assembled apology. She'd been building it in the elevator, clause by clause, professional and complete, dissolves. The man looks at her. She is 29 years old, 8 months from home, wearing the scrubs she changed into for the call-out at midnight. Her hair pulled back in a way that made sense at 7 p.m. and has since become something else. She has been running, literally running, and her chest is still catching up with her legs. He says, "She's not yours." Not accusatory. The way someone states something they've observed and want confirmed. Zuri's spine straightens without her deciding to straighten it. "She's mine now." He looks at Zola again. Zola is holding out crackers to both of them. Patient, offering, entirely certain that everyone in this room is hungry and she is the person to fix that. "Sit down," he says. Not to Zola. To Zuri. "You've been running since you got the call." Sit down. "I'll get you water." She stares at him. "I'm here to collect my daughter and apologize for." "She's not finished yet," he says, nodding at Zola and the crackers. "And you're still breathing hard." He stands, moves toward the kitchen. Not quickly, not performatively, just with the economy of motion that belongs to people who don't waste energy on unnecessary things. Or don't. But I'm not going to ask her to leave before she finishes. Zuri stands in the doorway of the most expensive penthouse she has ever been inside and looks at her daughter, who is holding out a cracker with the patient certainty that it will be accepted. She sits down. Zola smiles that full-body smile. "See," she says to no one in particular. "Crackers fix everything." 3 days later, Zuri gets a call-out at 11:40 p.m. to a loading facility at the port. She almost doesn't take it. Her rotation at the trauma center starts at 6 and she has exactly the right number of hours between now and then if she sleeps immediately and nothing happens. But the dispatch is coded urgent. Worker injury, possible spinal involvement. And she is, above everything else in all circumstances, without exception, a trauma nurse. A possible spinal involvement is not a thing she passes. She takes it. The facility is 20 minutes away. She moves through it efficiently. Finds the worker, a man in his 40s who has taken a fall from a loading platform, assesses quickly, talks him through it while her hands do their work. Not spinal. Thank everything. A serious shoulder fracture. A head laceration that needs monitoring. Shock beginning to set in. She gets a line in, calls for the transfer, keeps him warm and talking. She is prepping the handoff when she becomes aware of someone standing back from the scene. Most powerful men insert themselves. She's learned this in 8 months at a trauma center where corporate executives call ahead to warn about their arrival and expect to direct proceedings. They stand too close, ask questions during the critical moments, need to be the center of gravity even in someone else's emergency. This man stands back. He creates space and watches. Watches her work specifically. Not the injured man, not the activity around the scene. Or, with the focused attention of someone taking careful note of something important. She doesn't look up. She finishes. The transfer team arrives and she briefs them crisply, checks everything twice, signs the handoff. Then she straightens and looks at him. Baek Young-hoon in a dark coat, at a loading facility at midnight, looking at her with that same expression she couldn't categorize in the penthouse. Not softer in this context. Just different. "Thank you," he says. "It's my job." He's been with me for 9 years. Was. Just a beat. It's more than a job to me. She looks at him. He is already turning, already walking. Not away in dismissal but away in the way of someone who has said what they came to say and doesn't need it elaborated. His coat is dark against the dock lights. The harbor is behind him, oil-black water catching the industrial yellow of the loading cranes. She stands there for a moment after he's gone. Then she gets into her car and drives home and does not think about him. She thinks about him the entire drive home. His name is Baek Young-hoon and she knows, has known from the first night what he is. 8 months in Seoul and she's been careful about the things she doesn't look too closely at. The late movements in the building. The security arrangements that exceed anything a private resident would need. The quality of silence that follows his name. She's also a woman who works in the margins between living and not, who has learned that the architecture of a person is not the same as the architecture of their occupation, and that the two require separate assessment. She gives it the separate assessment it deserves. What she knows about his occupation. Enough. What she knows about the man. He didn't move when she was working. He stood back and gave her the space she needed without being asked. He sent someone to get her water and didn't make her say thank you for it. He sat across from a 5-year-old eating his crackers and instead of calling security immediately, he took a cracker. She doesn't know what to do with any of that. Zola is asleep by the time she gets home. Having been left with Mrs. Park next door, the retired schoolteacher who has become indispensable in the way that only certain neighbors can. Zuri stands in the doorway of the small room that Zola has made entirely her own in 8 months. Drawings taped to the wall, a row of rocks collected from parks and pavements, a stuffed giraffe named Thursday propped against the pillow, and breathes. He's been with me for 9 years. It's more than a job to me. She knows what it is to mean that. To have someone you've structured everything around. She looks at Zola's face in the faint light and knows it precisely, specifically, in the way you know things that have been paid for. She goes to bed. She doesn't sleep for a while. The building's medical arrangement brings her back twice in the following weeks for routine resident calls. Nothing dramatic. An elderly man on the 8th floor with concerning blood pressure readings, a young woman on 18 who hasn't slept in 4 days and needs someone to take it seriously. Both evenings, Zola comes with her because the evening childcare situation is what it has always been. Non-existent, unfunded by the exchange program, and navigated by Zuri with the specific resourcefulness of someone who has been navigating alone for long enough that she stopped noticing how tired it makes her. The first time, she leaves Zola in the lobby waiting area with the firmest instructions she can assemble. Stay. Here. Do not move. If you need something, ask the security desk and no one else. She comes back to find the lobby empty and Zola on the 32nd floor. Again. Zola. The voice she uses when she is trying very hard not to lose it. The nice man sent someone to get me, Zola says, completely unperturbed. She is on the same couch. There are crackers. He said the lobby was boring. Zuri looks at his housekeeper, a small, neat woman in her 60s who is watching this exchange with the expression of someone who has seen things and learned not to comment. He sent you to get her. Mr. Beck asked me to check if the little one was in the lobby, Mrs. Shin says carefully. She was. So I brought her up. Was. He thought she'd be more comfortable. Zuri turns to face the living room. Young-hoon is at his desk, half-turned, watching this. He has the particular stillness of someone who has made a decision and is not going to apologize for it. She's 5, Zuri says. You can't just. She was alone in a lobby at 9 in the evening. She was fine. She'd been asking the security guard if he had a dog for 15 minutes. Something that might be the edge of a smile. He doesn't have a dog. She was working through it. Zola looks up at Zuri. He doesn't have a dog, she confirms, as if this is the relevant information. But there are very good crackers. The second time it happens, Zuri doesn't even ask. She does the resident call, comes back down, and when she calls the security desk to say she's coming to collect Zola, the guard says, "She's on 32, ma'am. Mr. Beck sent Mrs. Shin." Of course he did, Zuri says. She takes the elevator up. Zola is in the middle of an intense conversation. Young-hoon is sitting on his own couch. She notices this, that he has given up the armchair and is on the couch level, Zola adjacent, listening with the focused attention of a man at a very important meeting. But if dinosaurs were birds, Zola is saying, then why don't birds eat as much? Dinosaurs ate a lot. I saw it. Birds eat relative to their size, he says. Proportionally, some birds eat more than dinosaurs did. Zola considers this very carefully. Which birds? Hummingbirds. Zola's eyes go wide. The tiny ones. The tiny ones. She looks at Zuri. Mama Zuri, hummingbirds are secret dinosaurs. I've heard, Zuri says. She is watching Zola explain the implications of hummingbird metabolism, and something is happening in her chest that she needs to not examine too closely while standing in someone else's penthouse at 9:30 on a Tuesday evening. Thank you, she says instead, for having her. He looks at her. She asks better questions than most of my meetings. That's a low bar. It is, he agrees. And there, just there, something opens in his expression. Not quite humor. Something adjacent to it. Something that looks like it has been in storage for a while and is uncertain of the light. Zuri takes Zola home. She is extremely careful not to think about that expression. Over the next 3 weeks, Zola develops what she calls her visit schedule, which Zuri has no memory of agreeing to but which has somehow become structural. Every time Zuri is called to the building, Zola ends up on 32. And then, because he asks Mrs. Shin, who tells Zuri with the gentle diplomacy of someone who understands they are navigating something delicate, Jung-hoon suggests that Zola can come directly, that it saves the lobby waiting, that it's more convenient for everyone. Zuri says she'll think about it. She thinks about it for 2 days and then says fine, because convenient is the one argument she cannot defeat, and her daughter's eyes when she mentioned it were not something she could look at and say no to. So it becomes a thing. Zola's questions are relentless. Jung-hoon answers all of them. What's your favorite color? Dark blue. Why? Because it looks like water looks at night. Zola thinks about this. I like yellow. Because it looks like Mama Zuri looks when she's happy. That's a better reason. I know. Do you have a dog? No. Do you want one? Oz. I've never thought about it. I think you'd be good with a dog, Zola says seriously. You're very calm. Dogs like calm. My teacher has a dog and she's very calm and the dog never barks, which is how I know they match. Why is your fridge so empty? This one lands differently. He looks at the fridge, which Zuri is also looking at from across the kitchen. She's here because the visit has extended past the original call and it's easier to wait, that's all. And the fridge is indeed startlingly empty. Not like someone who forgot to shop. Like someone who keeps forgetting there's a point to it. I don't cook much, he says. Because you're sad. Zuri goes still. Jung-hoon looks at Zola. Zola is looking back at him with 5-year-old directness. No cruelty in it, no performance. Just observation. Why would you think that? Because you look like Mama Zuri when she misses my mom, Zola says. Your eyes are the same. Tough sad. Not angry sad. Soft sad is when you miss someone good. She tilts her head. Do you miss someone? The kitchen is very quiet. Jung-hoon looks at this child for a long moment. Zuri watches his face do something complicated. Some internal arrangement shifting, like furniture moved in a room. The space suddenly different though nothing visible has changed. Yes, he says. I do. Me too, Zola says simply, as if this is the most ordinary thing. Mama Zuri says it gets less sharp. Not smaller. Just less sharp. Like the feeling's still there but the edges don't cut as much anymore. She reaches out and pats his hand twice. Efficient, factual, affectionate in the specific way of a child who has decided someone needs to be touched right now. That's true, by the way. I can tell because I miss my mom a lot, but it's softer now than it was. She goes back to her crackers. Jung-hoon sits with his hand in the spot where she patted it and does not say anything for a while. Zuri does not trust herself to look at him directly. She looks at Zola instead. At the small determined person her sister left in the world. This extraordinary, unboundaried, truth-telling child who has been walking toward grief in other people since she learned that grief exists, reaching out with both hands. It gets less sharp, she'd told him. Not smaller. The same words Zuri had given her 14 months ago, in the dark. She had not known they would work. She'd said them because she needed them to be true. Hearing them back, in Zola's voice aimed at someone else, she finds to her own surprise that she believes them. She finds out about the message on a Thursday from the night security guard, who mentions it with the careful casualness of someone who has been told not to mention it and is doing so anyway out of a conscience he can't quite suppress. Mr. Beck had us remove something from the building last week, he says. From the lobby entrance. Something that was left. Zuri is signing out after a late call-out. He stops. What kind of something? I can't say specifically, ma'am. But Mr. Beck had extra staff brought in after. She looks at him. He looks at the desk. Thank you, she says. She takes the elevator to 32. He opens the door before she knocks, which means he saw her in the security feed, which means he's been watching the lobby since the message, which tells her several things simultaneously. There was a message left for you, she says. In the building. You had it removed. Yes. You didn't tell me. No. She looks at him. The hallway between them is very clean, very quiet, lit with a particular amber of expensive light fixtures. He is in a dark shirt, no jacket, looking like a man who has been awake for a while and has stopped trying to look like he hasn't. Zola has been coming here, Zuri says. Her voice is doing the thing it does in difficult situations. Not louder, not harder, just very precise. Scalpel voice. You let her keep coming here after you knew something had been left. I increased security. The threat was indirect. That's not the point. I know. Then what is the point? Why didn't you tell me? She hears herself and pushes through it. I need to know things like that. I need to be able to make informed decisions about where Zola is and what she's exposed to. You took that from me. Yes, he says. I did. The simplicity of it stops her. No defense. No deflection. Just agreement. Why, she says. He looks at her. Something in his expression is doing that complicated thing again. The furniture rearranging itself, the room changing shape. I didn't want her to stop coming. The hallway is very quiet. I know that's not good enough, Zuri says. I know that too. I'm sorry. She looks at him for a long moment. She is trying to find the anger that carried her up here in the elevator. The clear, clean edges of it. Still there. But it's occupying the same space as something else now. Something that has been accumulating over weeks of Zola on his couch and hummingbird facts and the empty fridge and soft sad and standing back at the port while she worked. She turns and presses the elevator button. Zola won't be coming here for a while, she says. Until I understand what I'm dealing with. He doesn't argue. Doesn't reach for her. The doors open and she steps in and he stands in his doorway and lets her go, which is, she knows even as the doors close, the only correct thing to do. She is furious. She is also, against her will and better judgment, thinking about a man who says I didn't want her to stop coming with the blunt simplicity of someone who has forgotten how to say anything untrue. Zola gets sick on a Wednesday night. It starts as an ordinary child's fever. Warm forehead at dinner, sluggish in the bath, falling asleep before 7 with none of her usual resistance. Zuri checks her temperature. 38.2. Gives her appropriate medication, sets a timer, monitors. At midnight it's 38.8. At 1 am, 39.1. At 1:45, 39.6. And Zola is restless now, turning in the small bed, her face flushed, her breathing doing something that Zuri is watching very carefully. Zuri is calm. She is always calm. She has a list of contingencies and she works through them. The exchange program medical support line. Overwhelmed. A multi-vehicle accident on the expressway has pulled every resource. The duty officer is apologetic and useless. The backup contact is also on the accident response. The hospital is 40 minutes away and the fever, while dangerous, is not yet at emergency transport threshold. She's monitoring, she knows the threshold, she isn't there yet. She is alone in a small apartment at 2 in the morning with a 5-year-old whose temperature is still climbing and no backup. She sits on the edge of Zola's bed. Looks at her phone. Cycles through the contacts. Mrs. Park is 73 and Zuri will not do that. Not at 2 am. Her colleague Adama is in Busan for the week. Her program director is 3 time zones in the wrong direction. She stares at the phone. She calls the one number that answers. He picks up on the second ring. Abara. Not a question. She's never given him her number. He's never given her his. But she called his building concierge line and he answered directly, which means he was awake. Zola has a fever, she says. She stops. The word is very hard. I need someone else in the room. I'm coming. He arrives in 11 minutes. She doesn't ask how. He is in the doorway of her small apartment with his coat still on, and she moves aside to let him in, and he takes in the room. The thermometer on the bedside table, the medications lined up in her methodical way, Zola flushed and restless in the small bed, and he does not ask what to do. He sits in the corner chair. He stays there. Zuri works, checks temperature, adjusts the cooling cloth, monitors breathing, talks softly to Zola who is half-conscious and unhappy. She is in full clinical mode. Precise, efficient, tracking variables. In the corner, Jung-hoon sits without moving, without speaking, without inserting himself into a single moment of it. When she needs the pharmacy, a specific electrolyte solution, the kind that helps with pediatric fever recovery, she mentions it once, quietly, and he is gone and back in 14 minutes without her having to ask twice or explain the address or do anything except say the name of the medication. He sits back down. At 4 in the morning, Zola's temperature drops to 38.1. Then 37.8. The restlessness settles. Her breathing evens. The fever breaks. Zuri sits on the edge of the bed and puts her face in her hands. Not in collapse. Just in the specific privacy of putting a wall between yourself and the room for a moment, when you've been performing competence for 2 hours straight and can finally let your face do something true. She's okay, he says. From his corner. Quiet. I know. Her voice comes out different. The professional note gone from it. Just the raw, unguarded version. I know she's okay. She stops. Starts again. I was scared. She doesn't say that often. She can't remember the last time she said it to another person. You weren't showing it, he says. I know. That's not the same as not feeling it. He is quiet for a moment. She drops her hands and looks at him across the small apartment. The corner chair, the dark coat, the man who came without asking questions and stayed without needing to be thanked. You've been doing this alone for 14 months, he says. Not a question. Not sympathy. As stated. Yes. And before that I was 26 in Dar es Salaam on a nursing placement, and my sister was sick, and I was doing that alone too. She hears herself. I'm good at alone. I know how to do it. That's not, he pauses. Chooses his words with visible care. My brother used to say I carried things alone because I thought asking for help meant I wasn't enough. He was right. It took me a long time to tell him that. Zuri looks at him. Did you tell him? 3 weeks before he died. Yes. Something moves through his face. There and then contained. He said, finally. The apartment is quiet. Zola's breathing is steady now, regular and deep, the sound of a child genuinely asleep. The 4 AM stillness outside. No traffic, nothing, just the particular silence of a city that hasn't started yet. I'm sorry about your brother, Zuri says. I'm sorry about your sister, he says. They sit with that for a while. Just with it. Not trying to fix it or process it or package it into something manageable. Just 2 people with the same kind of hole in the same relative location, sitting in a small apartment at 4 in the morning with a child breathing steadily between them. After a long while, Zuri says, You should go. You've been here for 2 hours. I know. Thank you. She stops. The gratitude is too large for whatever words she reaches for. For staying. You would have managed without me. Yes, she says. I would have. She looks at him. That's not the point. Something in his expression shifts. Recognizes. He was the one who said that to her in the hallway. That's not the point. And now she's giving it back, and the symmetry of it does something to the space between them. He stands. Buttons his coat. Looks at Zola once. The small face quiet now, untroubled. She's extraordinary, he says. I know, Zuri says. She's the best thing. He leaves. She hears the door close very softly. She sits with Zola until dawn. 3 days later, recovered and catastrophically energetic in the way of children whose bodies have just won a battle, Zola announces over breakfast that she has something important to say. Zuri looks up from her coffee. What? I've been thinking, Zola says. I'm sure you have. I think we should keep Jung-hoon. Zuri puts down her coffee. He's not a thing we keep, Zola. I know that. Zola says this with 5-year-old patience, as though Zuri has missed the obvious point. I think he should be ours. Like how Mrs. Park is ours. Or like how Thursday is mine. She holds up the stuffed giraffe briefly for reference. Like that. Zola. Mama Zuri. Listen. Zola sets down her spoon with the gravity of someone calling a meeting to order. He has sad eyes but not scary sad. Of sad. Like when you look at Mom's pictures late at night. Zuri is very still. And his fridge was empty until I came. That's not good, Mama Zuri. A fridge should have things in it. People have different. And he learned how to make the crackers I like. Zola looks at her directly. Not just buy them. Make them. I saw the recipe on his phone. He had a whole recipe and there were notes on it like add more salt and try smaller. Which means he made them more than once. Zuri is not moving. He made them twice, Zola says. The first ones weren't right so he made more. She tilts her head. People who make crackers from scratch twice are not bad people, Mama Zuri. Zuri is quiet for a long moment. That's your measure, she finally says. Crackers from scratch. And soft sad eyes, Zola says very seriously. Both things together. Zuri looks at her daughter. This child, Amina's daughter, her daughter, the person she has been building her life around for 14 months. Looking back at her with Amina's eyes and a logic entirely her own. Twice, she thinks. He made them twice. Eat your breakfast, she says. Okay. Zola picks up her spoon. Then with perfect timing. I'm just saying. I know what you're saying. Good. Keats. I knew you would. The fractured alliances from Jung-hoon's worst meeting, the one that started everything, the night Zola found the penthouse, have been deteriorating for weeks in the specific way of things that have been held together by the force of a single person's reputation and are now testing what happens when that force wavers. The rival organization is called Daesung and Jung-hoon has known about them for years in the way you know about a current. It exists, you account for it, you don't swim against it directly. Daesung controls 3 southern port terminals and has wanted Jung-hoon's northern operations since before Jung-hoon was old enough to inherit them. They are patient. They are methodical. They wait for instability the way certain things wait for water. The instability is now visible. 3 alliance partners have pulled back. 1 commercial relationship has gone silent. The fractures from that terrible meeting have not healed. They've deepened, quietly, in the way of things that were already under pressure when the crack appeared. Jung-hoon's operations director Kwon brings him the intelligence on a Monday morning. Sits across from him and sets a tablet on the desk and watches him read it. They've filed a commercial dispute, Kwon says. Through a third-party intermediary. Targets the Northern Terminal operating rights. Claims a breach of a sub-licensing arrangement from 6 years ago. There was no sub-licensing arrangement 6 years ago. Correct. They've fabricated documentation. Eun reads. The fabrication is elegant. Specific enough to be credible, vague enough to survive initial scrutiny. And filed through an intermediary with just enough institutional distance to make it complicated to refute quickly. It doesn't need to win. It needs to survive 90 days. Long enough for the alliance partners watching the instability to decide the instability is permanent and move their operations elsewhere. How long to resolve through our legal contacts? 3 to 6 months minimum. The intermediary's standing gives it a layer we can't cut through quickly. 3 to 6 months is 3 to 5 months more than they have. Jung-hoon looks at the document. At the elegant engineering of it. At the specific vulnerability it's been designed to exploit. He thinks about who would know. Not about the filing. That's operational intelligence, available to anyone watching. About the specific vulnerability. Timing. The way this is structured to do maximum damage during the exact window when the alliance fractures are most visible. Someone told them when to move. Who knew about the alliance meeting, he says. Kwon goes very still. Sir. Who knew? Which of the 3 alliance partners shared our internal timeline with Daesung? Not a question. He's already running the calculation. Get me the answer before noon. Kwon leaves. Jung-hoon sits alone with the knowledge that 11 months after his brother died, after the person he built everything for stopped being in the world, his operation is facing the most elegant attack in its history, launched by people who know exactly where to cut. His phone shows Zuri's name. He doesn't call her. He has been not calling her since the night the fever broke, since he sat in her corner and said things he doesn't say to people, since he looked at Zola asleep and felt something that he's been trying to categorize as something manageable and cannot. He puts the phone down. He picks it up again. He puts it back down. She comes to him. He doesn't ask. She comes to him because she hears about the legal filing through the international medical community she's embedded in, the specific interconnected world of institutional consultants who move through Seoul's corporate sector and notice things, and she puts together what she already knows with what she hears and walks to his door at 7 in the evening on a Wednesday. He opens it before she knocks. "You have a commercial dispute filed against your port operations," she says. "Fabricated documentation through an intermediary." He looks at her. "How do you?" "I work in a hospital attached to the WHO regional program," she says. "The medical community and the commercial legal community overlap more than you'd think." A colleague mentioned a third-party intermediary filing. He pauses. "I know who your intermediary is. Abera. I also know someone who can make it collapse." She watches his face. A commercial legal consultant attached to the WHO regional office. Her institutional standing is such that fabricated commercial disputes don't survive contact with her review. She's looked at things like this before, things designed to look credible until someone with real weight examines them. He pauses. "I can make an introduction." He looks at her for a long moment. "This puts you in the middle of something that isn't yours." "I was in the middle of it when Zola ate your crackers," she says. "The difference is that was accidental. I'm choosing this. You understand what I am." "I understand what you do," she says steadily. "I've been watching what you are for 2 months. Those aren't the same thing." She meets his eyes. Zola already decided. I'm slower than she is. But I get there. The quiet between them is different from other quiets. Has a shape to it. A specific gravity. "If you do this," he says, "and it works, you're visible to people who use visibility as leverage. You know that." "I know. And Zola." "I know," she says again, more quietly. "I've thought about it." She looks at him. "I've thought about a lot of things." He is very still. "Make the introduction," he says finally. "Please." Please is small. It sounds like something he doesn't say often, applied carefully. "I will," she says. "And Jung-hoon." She stops. It's the first time she's used his name directly. They both notice. "The message in the building. The one you didn't tell me about." "Yes. Don't do that again." "No," he says. "I won't." She goes home. She makes the call. She sends the introduction that evening. Formal, professional, the language of institutional networks and mutual respect. She sits with her phone after and thinks about what she said. "I've been watching what you are." What she's been watching. A man who stood back at the port. Who sits on the floor with Zola when she needs floor-level company. Who made crackers twice because the first ones weren't right. Who said finally was the last thing his brother said to him. And told her that story at 4 in the morning when she needed to hear that asking for help is not the same as failing. What she is, she thinks, is in a great deal of trouble. What she is, also, is not particularly sorry about it. The legal complaint collapses in 11 days. Jung-hoon's operations director calls him at 6 in the morning to tell him, and Jung-hoon is already awake. He's been awake since 4, which is when he tends to be awake now, which was not a pattern before 11 months ago, and he listens to Kwon describe the consultant's review and the intermediary's withdrawal and the filing's sudden evaporation with the even tone of someone receiving information he expected but didn't dare count on. "The institutional weight was sufficient," Kwon says. "The intermediary had no appetite for the level of scrutiny." "Good. Sir, who made the introduction?" "A colleague," Jung-hoon says. "Handle the follow-up." He hangs up. Sits with his coffee. The harbor is visible from his window at this hour. The early light on water. The cranes in the slow pre-shift stillness before the port wakes up. He has been looking at this harbor for 38 years. He knows every variation of it, every light quality, every weather pattern. This morning it looks different. He can't explain why. It was different. He calls Quan back. The alliance partners who pulled back. Schedule meetings for next week. Sir. The instability was the argument, he says. The instability is over. Schedule the meetings. He hangs up. Looks at his phone. He doesn't call Zuri. What he wants to say is not a phone call. The Daesung betrayal, when Quan identifies it, comes from the second alliance partner. A man named Park Junseo who has been in the network for 7 years and who shared the meeting timeline with Daesung's operations people, not out of malice but out of the specific small cowardice of someone who was hedging. Someone who wasn't sure the wall was going to hold and wanted to be on record with whoever ended up on top. Jung-hoon meets with him alone. He doesn't do anything dramatic. He does things quietly and completely, and the results speak for themselves. And the result of this particular meeting is that Park Junseo exits the alliance permanently, with a clear understanding of the terms of his exit. No theatrics. The architecture of it is so clean it's almost architectural. He does it because Sun Woo would have hated the mess of anything else. Sun Woo hated messes. He liked clean lines and clear resolutions and rooms that made sense. He does it and drives back to the building and sits in the parking garage for a few minutes before going up. 11 months ago, he would have called Sun Woo from this parking garage. He would have said, "It's done, come have dinner, stop worrying." Sun Woo would have said, "I wasn't worrying." He would have said, "You were." Sun Woo would have said, "Fine, I'll come, what are we eating?" He sits in the parking garage. Then he goes upstairs. It's Zola who declares it a cracker morning. She announces this at 8:30 am on a Sunday with the complete authority of someone who has decided a thing and is simply notifying the relevant parties. She is standing in the doorway of Zuri's bedroom in her yellow elephant pajamas with Thursday under one arm and a look of focused purpose. "We're going to 32, she says. "For crackers." Zuri, who is 30 seconds awake and operating on 6 hours of sleep, says, "You can't just." "I texted him." Zuri sits up. "You, how did you?" "From your phone." Zola holds up Zuri's phone, which she has apparently been in possession of for some time. "He said okay." Zuri looks at her daughter. The phone. At the text history which shows, "Good morning, it is Zola, can we come for crackers?" And then, from Jung-hoon's number, "Yes." Yes. "Zola," Zuri says. "He said yes," Zola says simply. "So we should go." Zuri looks at the ceiling. The ceiling offers nothing useful. "Get dressed," she says. Zola smiles and runs. The penthouse is different in morning light. She's only been here at night before. Call-outs, late evenings, crisis moments. In daylight the harbor is bright through the floor-to-ceiling windows, the water catching the early sun, the cranes distinct against a sky that is doing something almost extravagant in its blueness. Zola goes directly to the couch. Her couch, she calls it now, the specific territorial confidence of a child who has claimed a place, and Jung-hoon puts crackers on the table with the ease of someone for whom this is already routine. They are homemade. Zuri can tell. She's been in enough kitchens to recognize the specific slight irregularity of something hand-cut. "These are," she starts. "She said she preferred the rounder ones," he says, not quite looking at her. "So I adjusted." Zuri looks at the crackers. Looks at him. Thinks about Zola at the breakfast table with her serious face. People who make crackers from scratch twice are not bad people. "Twice," Zuri says. "She told me that you made them twice. The first batch was too salty. She also told me that." He looks at her then. There's something in his expression. Not the usual careful guardedness but something more open. The version of him that has been appearing incrementally over 2 months of Zola on his couch and port emergencies and 4M corners. Zola is already settled, crackers in hand, watching the documentary channel with the focus of a child who has found what she came for. Zuri moves to the window. The harbor below. The city spread out to the horizon, complicated and layered and full of things she's still learning. "My program ends in 16 months, she says. She hears him come to stand beside her. Not close enough to touch. The specific proximity of two people who are both very aware of the distance. "I know," he says. "I haven't decided what I'm doing after." "I know that too." She looks at him. He is watching the harbor, The same harbor he's been watching his whole life, she thinks, with the same eyes that have been looking at something the same way for 38 years and are perhaps starting to look at it differently. You could say something. I could, he says. Then, with the smallest shift in his expression, Zola has been trying to get your attention for the last 30 seconds, and I think she has a position on this. Zuri turns. Zola is on the couch holding up a cracker. The same gesture from the first night. Patient, extended. The patient generosity of someone who has decided everyone in the room is hungry and she is the person to fix it. She is watching Zuri with complete calm and absolutely zero doubt. We still have a whole plate, Zola says. We shouldn't waste them. Zuri looks at the cracker. At Zola's face. At Jung-hoon, who is watching her with the expression she couldn't categorize the first night and has been learning to read since. Not soft exactly, not open exactly, but present. Fully, carefully. Deliberately present in a way she thinks he has not been for a long time. She means stay, he says quietly. Not just for crackers. I know what she means, Zuri says. She reaches out, takes the cracker. Zola's smile breaks across her face like something that has been waiting. Full and immediate and uncontained. The specific joy of a 5-year-old who has made a decision and watched the world agree with it. Good, she says, settling back into the couch with Thursday and her crackers and the absolute satisfaction of someone whose work here is done. I knew you would. The harbor sits below them in the morning light. Zola watches her documentary. The crackers are good. Better than the first batch, rounder, the salt exactly right. Zuri stands at the window and doesn't say the things she's not ready to say yet. He stands beside her and doesn't ask for them. They have, between them, the specific patience of two people who have both learned that some things cannot be rushed and some things do not need to be. That presence is its own declaration, that standing next to someone at a window is its own kind of language. She will go home to her apartment. She will work her shifts. She will navigate the 14 months left of her program and think about what comes after and not reach any conclusions yet. He will hold his alliances together, manage his port operations, eat regular meals because there is a small person who has decided his fridge shouldn't be empty. In between all of that, this Sunday mornings. Crackers that get better each time someone bothers to try again. A window with a harbor view. A child who has understood something her adults are still learning to say. That grief gets less sharp, not smaller. That a person can build a whole life around one reason and then lose that reason and find, slowly against their will, at 4 in the morning and in the middle of medical callouts and in the specific moment when a 5-year-old holds out a cracker, another one. Zola glances over at them once. Looks at Zuri standing at the window with Jung-hoon and the harbor behind them and the morning going its long slow way around the world. She goes back to her documentary. She knew they would. There's a version of this story where the moment Zola found the penthouse was nothing. A building security incident, a brief embarrassment, a thing that got corrected and filed away. Where two people with losses of the same shape passed through the same address without stopping. That's not this version. This version is about the specific intelligence of a 5-year-old who moves toward grief the way water moves toward low ground. Not thinking about it, just obeying something she can't name. And about two adults who have both been carrying things alone for long enough that the presence of someone else in the room feels, at first, like exposure and turns out to be, eventually, relief. Keep your fridge stocked. Make the crackers twice until they're right. Let someone sit in your corner at 4 in the morning. It's less complicated than it sounds. Don't forget to like and subscribe. See you in the next one.